Atmosphere in video games is one of those factors that often goes unnoticed, but when it's done right, it quite literally transforms the entire experience. Atmosphere is not just the graphics of a game, the interesting story or the soundtracks. It's all of that combined with the entire feeling of that game world you are playing. It's how everything comes together to make you feel like you're truly part of that world. The right atmosphere can stimulate certain emotions, create tension, and leave a lasting impression long after you put the controller down, or mouse down. Although you don't actually put a mouse down, but rather you get the point. Whether you're walking through the quiet and peaceful forests of Firewatch, or roaming the neon-drenched streets of Cyberpunk 2077, or even unraveling a time-traveling mystery in a high school setting like Life is Strange, it's the atmosphere that shapes these experiences. It pulls you into the world and keeps you there, letting you be immersed in a way that no other medium can match in quite the same way. That's why you'd often hear people describe playing video games as an escape from reality. In this video, I want to go over 5 particular video games that I picked out, which evoke such emotions, and it's all because of one aspect, and that is atmosphere. Life is Strange is a game that was released in 2015, and this game has atmosphere down to a T. The game plays such a big role in its storytelling, creating such a deeply atmospheric experience that many people who have played this game, or the franchise as a whole, can connect with. What the Life is Strange games do so well is their ability to show off the settings that the developers have created. The first game, for instance, takes place in Arcadia Bay, a small coastal town in Oregon. It's a place that feels both nostalgic and I'd even say uncanny, with its rustic glamour and the moody weather, and it's a huge part of what makes the game so memorable. Much of this is achieved through a combination of the game's pretty unique art style, the soundtracks which are simply incredible, and even the pacing of the story. Take the art style of the Life is Strange games for example. It's primarily artistic and dreamlike, utilizing a soft color palette that evokes such a sense of nostalgia. It's weird because why would such a game feel nostalgic, especially given that it's not real? Well, let's take a look at Blackwell Academy. Now, Blackwell Academy almost feels like a real place. It's a small town high school where drama, friendship and self-discovery unfold, just like they would in real life. The attention to detail, like the students hanging around the courtyard, the graffiti in the bathrooms, the posters on almost all the walls, and even the stereotypical high school bullies. All of these factors contribute to making the atmosphere feel alive and lived in. That's why when people often talk about this game, they would describe it as nostalgic. Nostalgic in a way that makes you remember your own high school days. Of course, without time travel and giant storms that's about to destroy everything and everyone you love. And while you're caught up in the day-to-day life of Max and her friends, there's always that underlying tension, that knowledge that something big is coming, which in this case is that big ass storm. Now, one thing that this game does so well in is something that I like to call meaningless but meaningful interactions. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, what I mean is how the game lets you explore pointless but at the same time meaningful moments. Simple activities like sitting on a bench by a lighthouse, rummaging through items in a student's room, or interacting with every prompt that the game offers you. A lot of this is pointless, but these moments all contribute to the atmosphere of what makes Life is Strange so good. You see, by featuring these quiet and meaningless scenes, the game creates an emotional resonance that's quite rare in video games, giving you the space to process not only the story of the game, but also your own thoughts of what's happening. I also believe the key component of Life is Strange's atmosphere is in its incredible soundtracks, featuring indie tracks from artists like Sid Matters, Alt J and Mogwai. The music deepens the atmospheric connection that we have with the world, the characters and the story. Unlike many video games that rely on original scores, Life is Strange uses a mix of licensed indie and folk tracks that perfectly capture the game's mood, which is melancholic, nostalgic and deeply personal. From the moment you step into Blackwell Academy with Max, you hear To All of You by Sid Matters, a mellow acoustic track that immediately sets the tone for Max's shy, introspective personality. In contrast, Chloe's rebellious side shines through with Piano Fire by Sparklehorse, a raw, grungy track that mirrors her wild, carefree attitude. It's more than just music, it's part of the game's soul, guiding you through the highs and lows without ever overpowering the main story. And then there's Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is a bit different in its approach to atmosphere. It does not have the natural disaster like the first game, but it still manages to create tension in a more personal and emotional way. Even Life is Strange True Colors, the atmosphere here shifts to something much more warmer and more comforting. The small town of Haven Springs, Colorado feels like a place you'd want to call home, or at least that's how I see it. The town is just snuggled in the mountains, surrounded by stunning natural beauty. I feel a good way to describe this town is the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, and life here moves a little slower. The sense of community in Haven Springs is what makes it feel so cozy. People here know each other, they stop to chat, and are genuinely invested in each other's lives. And all of what I said is what makes Life is Strange a very, very good atmospheric franchise. Cyberpunk 2077's atmosphere is one of the best atmospheres in any game, hands down. Sure, the game has had a rough start, but there's something undeniably powerful about the way Night City pulls you in. This city is a full-on sensory overload, a neon-lit maze of skyscrapers, flashing ads and packed streets that make it feel genuinely alive. You could just wander through its chaotic streets, zoom down highways, explore random back alleyways, and no matter where you are, you will always feel atmosphere and immersion weigh in on you. Let me just say it, Night City is the most immersive video game city I've ever seen. Plenty of games try to create life like urban environments, but Night City does it so differently. It's not just that it looks futuristic, it feels like a real city. When you walk around at a normal pace, without rushing to complete missions, you can really appreciate all the little details. All of it adds to this illusion that you're walking to a living, breathing world. A lot of people like to compare Night City to places in other open world games, especially Los Santos from GTA 5, but for me there is no comparison. Now don't get me wrong, Los Santos is great, but it kind of feels like a movie set, a place built for you to mess around in. Night City on the other hand feels like it's been there forever, like it existed long before you showed up, with history, and it will keep going long after you're gone. Even when you're not directly interacting with it, you feel the city around you, like it's part of something bigger than just your character's story. One of the things that really makes Night City stand out is the sound design. The folks at CD Projekt Red nailed it. The hum of distant machines, the chatter of people on the streets, the way music shifts as you move through different areas. It all keeps you grounded in this world, whether you're in the heart of the city or the quieter outskirts. The sound just makes everything feel more real. It's the kind of attention to detail that keeps you hooked, even when you're not really doing much in terms of gameplay. Now, I get that some people criticize the game for the NPCs not always reacting the way you'd expect, or for not having as much interactivity as they hoped, and yeah, there are moments when that illusion breaks. But even with those hiccups, Night City has never felt dead. It's more alive than most open world cities because of how densely packed and detailed everything is. Each area, from the shiny corporate districts to the grungy slums, is easy to differentiate. Another thing that sets Night City apart is in its verticality. I've noticed that most open world games sprawl out horizontally. You spend most of your time moving across large maps. Night City, however, is stacked. You're ascending buildings, taking elevators, and exploring hidden spaces up high or down low. That vertical design makes the city feel so much bigger and more intricate. You can spend hours just exploring different layers of buildings, and it still feels like there's more to discover. The best example I can think of is in the Phantom Liberty DLC, during a certain mission where you take an elevator to a bajillion floors. It's pretty nuts, because all the floors that you pass through in the elevator are accessible. Now, that's not to say the game does not have any room for improvement. I, like a lot of players, would love to see more ways to interact with the city. Minigames like pool, darts, or gambling would add to the atmosphere and realism, giving you more reasons to just hang out and live in this world. Games like the Yakuza franchise do this well. You can simply just kick back at a bar, or challenge somebody to a game of darts. Even without those features though, Night City still oozes atmosphere. It's packed with so much detail that it never feels empty. Even the characters of Cyberpunk 2077 are essential to the atmosphere of Night City, each fitting perfectly into its chaotic dystopian world. Johnny Silverhand, a rebellious ex-rockstar, embodies the city's anarchistic spirit, fighting corporate control even after death. Jackie Wells, your loyal friend, is a street kid with dreams of making it big, representing the gritty struggle for survival in Night City's harsh underbelly. And even Judy Alvarez, a skilled brain dance technician, she maneuvers the emotional toll of the city. Another game I want to talk about when it comes to atmosphere is What Remains of Edith Finch. Now, not everyone might know of this game, but if you do, you've got great taste. This game is easily one of the saddest and most emotional games I've ever played. It revolves around Edith Finch, the last surviving member of her family, who returns to her family home to figure out what happened to everyone before her. Right from the start, the game pulls you into its world with a haunting yet beautiful tone. But what really makes this game so immersive and atmospheric is not just the story or the characters, though those are major factors. It's the game's attention to detail, the way it tells stories through its environment, and how it uses sound and visuals to create a world that you can feel. The Finch house itself plays a massive role in this atmosphere. As you explore, it's like the house becomes its own character, telling stories across the things left behind by the people who lived there before. Each room is like a snapshot of a person's life, with personal belongings, photos, and unfinished tasks, giving you an idea of who they were before you even hear their story. The house is cluttered and decaying, making you feel like time has stopped, trapping both the beauty and the tragedy of the Finch family within its walls. As Edith Finch, you move through these spaces, unlocking both literal and metaphorical doors, learning about each family member in a way that feels natural and immersive. The detail in each room is staggering, and nothing feels out of place. It's as if every nook and cranny of the house has a story to tell, without a word ever being spoken. One thing the game does so well is balancing beauty with sadness. While every story in this game ends with the loss of a family member, it never feels too depressing. There's something oddly beautiful about the way these stories are told, often in creative and sometimes even playful ways, which helps lighten the heavy themes. Edith Finch's story, for example, is one of the most powerful. He struggles with depression, but his vivid daydreams provide an escape from his mundane job at a cannery. As you play, you experience the contrast between his repetitive work and the colourful, adventurous world that he imagines. This mix of reality and fantasy creates a bittersweet atmosphere. You feel his pain, but you also admire the beauty of his imagination. It's in these moments that the atmosphere of the game really hits you, leaving a pretty big lasting impact. Firewatch, a game that is a lot more popular compared to what remains of Edith Finch, and this game excels in atmosphere just like a few other games. Set in the show-shown natural forests of Wyoming, the game invites you to explore the wilderness through the eyes of Henry, a fire lookout dealing with personal struggles. The game's atmosphere is shaped by its unique art style, its ambient sounds, and also the emotional storytelling, which all together make Firewatch a game that is highly praised. First off, the art style. It's very easy to see that this game is not photorealistic, but its use of a vibrant, warm color palette creates an almost dreamlike quality to the environment. Rich reds, oranges, and yellows saturate the sunsets, while those lighter blues and purples drape over the forest during the nighttime, pretty much giving you all sorts of emotions depending on the time of day or weather conditions. At the game's core, Firewatch is a game that's all about solitude and isolation, and this feeling is very important to its atmosphere. Henry, the main character, takes on the job of a fire lookout to escape his troubled life, finding the solitude that he's searching for. But as the plot moves forward, the wilderness around him starts to shift, feeling less like a retreat and more like a trap. The game does an incredible job of using the environment to mirror Henry's emotional journey, slowly building a sense of unease. The isolation that Henry experiences is pretty intense. While he does talk to Delilah, who is another lookout, over a walkie-talkie, there is always a noticeable physical distance between them. Their conversations feel like his only connection to the outside world, which makes it even more unsettling when these moments of communication get cut off or interrupted. As weird events start happening in the forest, the peaceful landscape that once seemed welcoming becomes more threatening, almost hostile. It's easy to feel small, vulnerable, and isolated in the world of Firewatch, and these emotions are heightened by the game's quiet moments, when all you can hear are the sounds of rustling leaves or distant birds. I guess that sense of being alone and vulnerable is heightened by how the game gives you very little control or guidance. You have a map and a compass, but wandering through the massive empty forest can feel confusing and disorienting, adding to that growing sense of being lost, both in the wilderness and even in Henry's emotional states. And then there's also the sound design in Firewatch, which is a massive component that elevates the atmosphere. The thing with a lot of games nowadays is they overpower you with music soundtracks, but Firewatch opts for minimal, carefully placed audio cues. The sound of wind rustling through the trees, distant bird calls, the crunch of leaves and twigs underfoot, and the occasional crackle of a campfire all work to immerse you in its environment. The forest is quiet, but it's not quiet in a way that feels comforting. There's a kind of tension to the silence, making you feel like you're truly alone in the wilderness, although maybe somebody is watching you. When the music does play, it's very subtle and comes on during important moments, adding to the suspense without overwhelming you. The quiet moments in the game where all you can hear are the sounds of nature creates this tension that makes you feel like you're truly alone, and maybe, as I said, even being watched. The last game I want to talk about when it comes to atmosphere is one that you might not have heard of, but trust me, it's all about the atmosphere. The game is called The of Rachel Foster. You play as Nicole, a young woman who returns to her family's hotel to sell it off. It seems simple, right? But the real standout here is the way the game makes you feel like you're being watched. Even when you are alone in the dark hallways of the Timberline Hotel, there's a constant feeling that someone or something is always watching you. And it's not just in your head either. The hotel itself feels like it has secrets. It's like it's alive, trying to hide things from you, while at the same time it feels like it doesn't want you there. I did notice that the walkie-talkie aspect of this game felt very similar to Firewatch, but with the roles kind of reversed. The way the game builds Irving's character through your conversations is subtle yet effective. He becomes a lifeline, but at the same time, you cannot fully trust him, especially as his motivations and identity become more clouded. There's an eerie intimacy to the dynamic between Nicole, who is the protagonist, and Irving, like he's your friend, but maybe not quite as helpful as you initially think. His voice in your ear is comforting at first, but as the game progresses, you start to feel as though he knows more than he's letting on, which already intensifies the already thick atmosphere of mistrust. Then there's the snow, the heavy, relentless snowfall that traps you within the hotel, turning the outside world into a cold, white void. The best way I can describe the setting of this game and the weather weather is a prison. Every time you look out a window or step out briefly, the blizzard is there, suffocating any thought of escape. It's kind of almost claustrophobic in a way. You know you can't leave, and the blizzard feels like a natural extension of the hotel's grip on you, making sure you cannot get away no matter how much you want to. The isolation in this hotel is so real in this game. There is literally nobody else around, just you and the old creepy hotel, and that hotel, which was once full of life, is now empty and falling apart. You've got silence in the halls, the occasional creaks of the building. It all makes it feel like the place is alive in a way that's both eerie and fascinating, and the atmosphere in this game is a solid 10 out of 10. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Now, aside from these 5 games, drop a comment below with a game that you think has incredible atmosphere, because there are so many more out there. For me, atmosphere is a key part of what makes a game great. It's that immersive factor that can completely change how you experience it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Big thanks as always to my Patreon members for the support, and with that said, I'll see you in the next one.